today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Tasha Jonas has yet to decide on her boxing future on the heels of her lopsided defeat to unified welterweight champion Lauren Price. I will never watch that fight back, Tasha Jonas told Boxing News over Zoom. It took me a good 10 years to watch my fight with Katie Taylor in the Olympics, so the chances of me ever watching that fight back are very slim. That fight, of course, is the night Jonas suffered her first defeat in nearly 4 years. Lauren Price beat Jonas at the Royal Albert Hall on the Boxer all-female show, and in the process, Jonas surrendered her world welterweight baubles to the former Olympic champion. Price defeated Jonas on points, with all three judges giving it to the victor by a wide margin. Scores of 98-93 and 102-90 and 98-92 reflected a fight that started to go against the Liverpudlian fighter from the very early stages. The tactics weren't wrong, a reflective Jonas told me. I just didn't expect her to be as strong as she was. I don't think there was anything in her performances that showed me that before. I knew she would be fast, but she was faster than I expected as well. When I jabbed, she was replying with 3 punches. I was just overwhelmed. I was so hesitant to throw combinations because I was getting so many counters back when I threw single shots. At 40, the suggestion was that it was a fight where her age finally caught up with her, but Jonas doesn't see it that way. I definitely don't think it was one fight too many. I think it was more about her style. I mean, it is true. Lauren is quite the physical specimen, and losing to Lauren the way that she did doesn't mean she can't pick up a title somewhere else. Maybe it was just good timing for Lauren and bad timing for me. Lauren was certainly better than I thought she was. Faster. I would say that Lauren Price is the single most athletic fighter in the entire welterweight division, the fastest fighter with the fastest hands and the fastest feet, the fastest reaction time. Lauren Price is a handful for anybody and everybody at 147 pounds, let alone a 40-year-old Tasha Jonas. The logical next fight for Lauren Price would be an undisputed showdown with the WBO champion Mikaela Mayer. Jonas has shared 10 hard rounds with Mayer and thinks the American could have the style to trouble the unbeaten Price. Mikaela would have to be quick with her feet to stop her moving, which I don't think I was, Jonas told me. I think Mikaela could outwork Lauren because she is quite lazy, but Mikaela will have to pin her down because Lauren will just keep moving. I think Mikaela could put it on her because her work rate is better than mine. It was another moment in time for women's boxing. A night that truly delivered for the female side of the sport. Even in defeat, Jonas knows the importance of that night. It does spoil it a little bit, but I can still appreciate the occasion for what it was. It is the obvious question that somewhat one-sided nature of her defeat left many questioning if that was the end for the two-weight world champion, but Jonas still hasn't reached a definitive decision on her boxing future. I think I am going to wait for a few results. Joe Gallagher has mentioned going back up to 154 and potentially facing Mary Spencer or Cecilia Brækhus, or even fighting Mikaela again. Personally, I think the two biggest fights out there would be either Katie Taylor or a rematch with Mikaela. They are probably the only two fights that would get me up for training again. Pride, ego, to go out with a win and leave the sport on my own terms, Jonas adds when I ask what would make her fight again. I am out of contract with Boxer, so I am free to do what I want. The lack of opportunities to get the big fights that I really want, Jonas says, of what could lead her to walk away from the sport. If I fight again, it has to mean something. You sense that if the right offer does come along, Jonas will indeed fight on. For many reasons, the chances of fighting Katie Taylor again seem remote, but a rematch with Mikaela Mayer is far more likely. Initial contact from the Mayer camp has been made. If the ongoing discussions with Lauren Price end without reward, Mayer could easily fight Jonas again, perhaps this time in America. Without any contractual obligations, it is undoubtedly the easiest fight to make and the biggest opportunity for Natasha, though not the easiest fight. By all rights, Natasha should have lost the first fight with Mikaela. She got off. She got lucky because Boxer was promoting the show and she had home field advantage. If she fights Mikaela again, Boxer won't be promoting it, and I hardly think it'll be in the UK. Michaela might bring her to the US. Though outside of a date with Mayer, there seems to be little else out there that would satisfy Jonas. In many ways, Tasha Jonas can walk away from boxing with no regrets and a future outside of boxing that has plenty going for her. Retirement holds no fears. For the 5-time world champion, I've immersed myself in so many different things, Jonas told me. Wise investments in property, multiple ongoing paid positions. You sense Ms. GB won't struggle once the gloves are retired for good. Jonas, who just turned 41, will surely walk into the Hall of Fame when her name first appears on the ballot to do so. A resume that will stand the test of time. And Jonas says she is incredibly satisfied with her time in the sport of choice. I've always said that everything I did after beating Chris Namis on the Amir Khan Kell Brook show would be a bonus. Jonas relayed to Boxing News. I'm proud of what I achieved. People only remember the good times, but sports are full of ups and downs, and I've been doing that all my career. Even before boxing, I was football and getting injured. It was the downs that help you grow and develop. I don't think that is talked about enough. So Smokin' Joe Gallagher believes that moving up to 154 is an option for Natasha. And maybe it is. She is still a name after all. But being a free agent without Boxer and Sky Sports behind her to finance those fights, that could make them difficult to come by. There's also the proposed rematch with Michaela Mayer that has more of a profile than any fight at 154 would. However, it's not a very winnable fight. If it happens now, it will happen under very different circumstances than their initial meeting. Forget about a Katie Taylor fight. To where Natasha might look around, look at the landscape, what's immediately available to her, and what isn't, and might decide to walk away. She's had a complete career, ups and downs, wins and losses, thrills and spills. Maybe it's time to hang them up. I always figured that Lauren Price would be the one that retires Tasha Jonas, and that prediction does not seem that far off. In men's cruiserweight news, Zurdo Ramirez keeps it simple no matter what Jake Paul and company think. Anaheim, California. Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez might leave something to be desired in his ability to hype a fight, but when it comes to the basics that matter, grinding in the rhythm, outworking his foe, he's collected all the merchandise that matters. Ramirez, 34, irked the head of Most Valuable Promotions, Nikisa Badarian, earlier this week by trudging through his public workout by merely holding up his WBO and WBA cruiserweight titles, likely trying not to give anything away to the opposing team, to Team Dorticos, showing them what they've been working on, giving them a glimpse. Jake wants to fight people who are going to rise to his level and show the fan base what it means to be a boxer and get people excited, Badarian said. I was so disappointed what I saw in Zurdo. It's your chance to show everybody why you should be fighting Jake Paul next. Instead, we're showing belts. Ramirez, 47-1, 30 knockouts, may further disenfranchise himself from Paul should he dominate Saturday's DAZN pay-per-view co-main event versus Cuba's Uniel Dorticos, 27-2 with 25 knockouts. There is such a thing as looking too good in a performance. In a boxing ring there is. If Zurdo Ramirez goes in there and annihilates Uniel Dorticos, do you think that a novice like Jake Paul is going to want to fight him? And in terms of personality, Zurdo's never had much of that. Jake Paul fights Mexico's Julio Cesar Chavez, a raging cokehead, in the main event. And a victory could potentially move him into both the WBA and WBC top 15 rankings, which would qualify him for either a title shot at Ramirez or the 41-year-old WBC champion Badu Jack, who's supposed to be having a rematch with former champion Noel Michalalian. If I'm open, after this fight, Ramirez said to the question of when he's ready for Paul, I need to win. He needs to win. That's fine for me. Since his November 2022 light heavyweight title loss by unanimous decision to current undisputed champion Dimitri Bivol, Ramirez has reeled off 3 consecutive unanimous decision triumphs over Joe Smith Jr., Arsene Goulamarian, and Chris Billum Smith, to stand as a unified titleist alongside Badu Jack and IBF Ring Magazine champion Jai Opetaia, crediting his winning streak to his training with Julian Chua. We've been training hard, put in a lot of effort in the gym, everything is due to the gym because we've been putting a lot of great performances on in there. In KO Doctor, Dorticos, 39, Ramirez meets the WBA's top-ranked contender who is similarly has prepared diligently in Florida and is so locked in on the task that PBC-linked promoter Leon Margules says Dorticos hasn't requested one ticket for friends and family.
I'm focused, man!
He knows what time it is, Margules said. A two-time title challenger who lost to Murat Kasiev and Mayris Briedis, Dorticos similarly kept his fight-selling skills to a bare-bones exercise at Thursday's news conference, saying, "I'm gonna show you guys, 39 years is really nothing. I'm gonna show up Saturday because we're gonna have a war." Ramirez expressed confidence he can deal with Dorticos' punching power. "I think I can take punches. I have the skill to beat this guy," he said. "I'm gonna prove I'm the best in this division. That's why I'm putting my belts on the line, to prove I'm the best cruiserweight." Not exactly. He's only really fighting Uniel because he's under orders to do so. Uniel is his mandatory. "I expect a war. I expect he's really prepared. Everyone will see why Zurdo Ramirez is the champion. I'll be prepared for KO Doctor." Should the popular Jake Paul defeat Chavez, enter both rankings and shun him in favor of Badu Jack, Ramirez said he's prepared to turn to Australia's Opetaia, 28-0 with 22 KOs. "This fight first, then anyone. If I can get all the belts, let's do it," Ramirez said. As for the showmanship, Ramirez said what matters most to him is this: win the fight. "I don't have to prove anything to anyone other than myself. I believed in myself my whole career," he said. Let's talk about the Dorticos fight. Just a refresher. I think Zurdo has what it takes to win, and I think that he will win, acknowledging that Uniel only has to hit him once. The cruiserweights are not that far off from the heavyweights, and the same rule applies. When the men are that size, you only really gotta hit a guy once to hurt him. So Zurdo Ramirez might have more recorded knockouts than Uniel, but not as a cruiserweight. A lot of those knockouts are at super middle, light heavy. He has no recorded knockouts as a cruiser, though he's put on some fantastic performances. He didn't knock out Joe Smith. He didn't knock out Arsene Goulamarian. He didn't knock out Chris Billum Smith. He beat him up real good, but he didn't stop him. Power, the edge in power, would have to go to Uniel. So then how does Zurdo beat him? How does Zurdo defuse this bomb? Trained by Julian Chua, who seems a smart, young trainer. He's got to notice Uniel Dorticos' wingspan. He's got to notice this guy's got really long arms. And to generate power, he needs room to do that. So that's what you have to deprive him of. You've got to get in close, like Murat Kasiev did, with short hooks, short punches, uppercuts up the middle, pressing forward and staying on him, which should be right up Zurdo Ramirez's alley, because that's more how we used to fight down at 168 and 175. Before he became the nuanced boxer that you see as a cruiserweight, he was a pressure fighter. He was a pressure guy, a close quarters fighter. He's got to play Uniel close and smother him. Zurdo and Julian Chua have to get that strategy down right, because if you give Uniel enough room to get full extension on the arm, he generates devastating power you don't want to be on the receiving end of. What the hell does he have to do with anything? Now, it may seem and sound simple enough for Zurdo to stay with and stay on Dorticos, but what he has to watch out for are the straight punches. While he's closing the distance, he has to be careful not to get caught. Get clipped. I think Zurdo Ramirez should win the fight, and win the fight by way of a points decision. He hasn't proven to be much of a knockout merchant as a cruiserweight, but he does have that work rate, his prior experience, the style for the job, experiences, and youth on his side. He is 4 or 5 years younger than Dorticos, after all. So Zurdo on points is the pick. Beyond that, does he really stand a chance of landing the Jake Paul fight when there's another champion at cruiserweight, an older one, which is right up Jake Paul's alley? Let's not kid ourselves. That's what he's into. Fighting old men. Old Tyrone Woodley, old Ben Askren, old Anderson Silva, old Mike Tyson, old Badu Jack, who's 42 years old. Though still capable enough that that's a dangerous fight for Jake. Better still, if Jake has to choose between Zurdo, who's 34, and Jack, who's 42, who do you think he's going to choose? Zurdo's name may be in the hat for a Jake Paul fight, but I hardly think he's at the top of a short list. I don't think he would be Jake Paul's first choice. The issue with Badu Jack is he's on the hook to fight Noel Mikhailian again. So Jake and Jack and all the aforementioned parties would have to sort that out. Zurdo is still in a good position, though, a strong one, because even if he can't get Jake Paul, he can get a David Benavidez fight. He can afford him a shot at his 2 Alphabet titles, and we already know that Team Benavidez is receptive to such a fight. They've been talking about it as far back as November of last year. They're supposed to be in negotiations for a Callum Smith fight, but if you're talking about a fight in America, what makes for a bigger fight? A fight with Callum Smith or a fight with a Mexican national in Zurdo Ramirez?
You know the answer.
All this stuff we've been hearing about Callum Smith in the fall, we're in negotiations. I think it's a formality. Underneath it all, I think Team Benavidez are waiting out the outcome of Ramirez versus Dorticos. Should Zurdo win, they'll move into negotiations with him.
Zurdo also mentioned Jai Opetaia, a unification match with Jai Opetaia. He'd get paid well for that fight. Turkey would likely be the one who bankrolls it, but because Oscar De La Hoya is seemingly moving away from Riyadh season and those Ring Magazine shows,
whenever he takes shots at the Canelo versus Crawford fight that Turkey is bankrolling, that Turkey is paying for, it gives me the impression that moving forward, he may not be as quick to have his fighters fighting on Turkey's shows. I feel like Oscar would prefer that Zurdo fight David Benavidez in America than Jai Opetaia in Saudi or someplace else.
For Zurdo, the Benavidez fight might seem more winnable because David doesn't fight at cruiserweight. He'd be a newbie to the division as opposed to Jai Opetaia, who's a full-fledged cruiser. He's never been anywhere else.
So it all means the same thing, that Zurdo's got a lot of fingers in a lot of pies. Potential Jake Paul fight, potential David Benavidez fight, Jai Opetaia. He's in a good position, a strong one, that if one fight don't work, you got 2 others you can work on. And every single one of those fights pay decent money. If you are lucky enough to land the Jake Paul fight, or a David Benavidez pay-per-view, I think that might actually sell okay. Or a big Saudi bag for Jai Opetaia. He's in a strong position, and all he has to do to get to that money is maintain it this weekend by beating Uniel Dorticos.
If he can do that, he stands to make decent money, perhaps the best money he's ever made, moving forward.
So we'll see how he makes out on the undercard, the co-main event of Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez.